Global arms sales grew again last year for the seventh year in a row. That's according to SIPRI, the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. Its annual report for 2021 says weapons sales were up despite supply chain challenges amid the pandemic. So sales by the top 100 companies in the industry reached $592 billion. That's an increase of almost 2% on the previous year. US companies again dominated the list with nearly $300 billion of arms sales, but that was a drop of almost 1% on 2020, blamed mainly on inflation. Now, China, meanwhile, boosted its arms sales by more than 6% to $109 billion. Four Chinese companies are ranked in the top 10. And then there's Russia, whose sales rose to $17.8 billion, but that was only up 0.4% on 2020. And that, of course, was before it invaded Ukraine. Now, experts expect the war to add to supply chain woes for the arms industry. Well, to talk more about the findings from the SIPRI report, I'm joined by Lorenzo Scarazzotto from the SIPRI Institute. He's in Stockholm. Welcome to DW, Lorenzo. Now, firstly, what do you make of how little Russian arms sales rose in 2021, just before it attacked Ukraine?
Well, it has been an ongoing trend. We've seen Russian companies stagnating at least since 2016. And to the point that the Kremlin issued a statement encouraging companies to diversify their production to enter the civilian market and become profitable again. We've also seen companies being deep in debt, and the Russian government had to bail them out multiple times, 2016, 17, 19, and again 2020. Therefore, yes, it's been an ongoing trend. We believe the civilian production in defense companies will now be reduced or at least shut down. But again, we have to see what's the effect of the sanctions, but also the supply chain production. It has been an ongoing struggle for the Russian defense industry to produce what was needed at the front line. We've seen it using missiles thought to deliver warheads, and they've been using that for conventional warfare. So yes, it remains to be seen, but it has been an ongoing trend.
Lorenzo, what about worldwide? How much has the war in Ukraine actually affected demand?
Well, our data is actually referring to 2021, but we are going to see an increase in arms sales. That's very, very much probable. Since the Cold War, European countries were expecting a different kind of warfare, low intensity, and possibly asymmetric. The war in Ukraine, as we all know, changed this perception. Sending weapons to Ukraine is going to create a demand, and we have to differentiate this demand. We have, on one hand, the demand stemming from replenishing stockpiles, and that is not likely to tip the scales. Legacy weapon systems are usually cheaper, and that's not going to make the difference on the long term. What is likely to make the difference are the more advanced systems, such as the F-35s. We've seen Germany, Czech Republic, even Greece interest in these systems. However, this is going to take time. Companies are waiting before ramping up production. They are waiting to see contracts signed. They want to make sure there is going to be an increased and consistent demand across time. So yes, we probably see an increase in long term. We've seen an increase now even with the pandemic and the fallout of the pandemic.
I want to talk about China, Lorenzo, because they've been pouring money into their weapons industry. And of course, this is against the backdrop of those increasing tensions over Taiwan. Can you tell us a little bit more about China and the situation there?
Sure. China has 8 companies in the top 100 and 4 in the top 10. China has been a major player in arms industry for a number of years. And the recent increase is probably due to the fact that they're not affected by supply chain issues. Their supply chain is local, and it has been local for all the region. All Asian Oceania is trying to find a domestic and autonomy in arms production. Again, ramping up production takes time, and we've seen China ramping up production consistently across years, at least since the 90s. What's very relevant in this year is that we've seen the military shipbuilders, the first in the world, the biggest in the world, being created from 2 existing companies in China.
Lorenzo Scarazzotto from the SIPRI Institute in Stockholm, thank you.
Thanks for having me.